Today is May 17th, 2022. Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals is called to order at this time. I need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes from April 19th, 2022.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Minutes stand as written. If you've not done so, please sign in the back of the room. And anyone wishing to speak tonight, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Answer with I do. I do. Thank you. At this time, do we have any special requests tonight, continuance, withdrawals, or waivers? Yes. I was trying to go slow.
The petitioner for petition number 22 LUV07 for 4351 North Shadeland Avenue has requested a continuance to the June 21st, 2022 meeting with notice. So anybody who's here for that case tonight, you will get another notice telling you that it's on June 21st, same time, right here. No. They're entitled to 3.
Now we'll hear old business, just 22 LUV06.
2 minutes. Motion for minutes.
Oh, motion was
JD. Second.
Tracy.
Trace.
Old business is 22 LUV06, 12147 East 65th Street. Variance of use of 743-2, Table 743-1 of the City of Indianapolis Consolidated Zoning Subdivision Ordinance to provide for a self-storage facility, including both indoor climate control units as well as traditional outside access units on a parcel zone C3. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairperson Lytle, members of the board. My name is Joe Calderon. I am an attorney at 11 South Meridian, Indianapolis. I represent the current owner and proposed developer of about a 4-acre parcel located next to the post office, commonly addressed of all things as 12147 East 65th, but it's essentially Pendleton Pike and Bearsdale Drive. Each of you should have an exhibit booklet that I can walk you through. Don't pay attention to tab 5 in the exhibit book. Pay attention to the loose commitments because they changed today after I'd started putting the booklets together. So, as the secretary read in, this is a petition for variance of use to allow for a self-storage facility to be located on property that's zoned C3. So there's 2 things that I want to explain. First of all, a lot of times you hear the word self-storage facility, you think, oh no, it's going to look orange, steel sheds, etc. This is anything but that. And before we ever filed, my client, who's here with us tonight, Waleed Abdul-Rahim, who has experience in this business, had worked with the city administration in terms of the architecture and the style that could fit on this parcel along Pendleton Pike. Again, to make it look more commercial, less institutional, etc. So there were a lot of discussions, meetings, iterations, professional architect hired to design a facility that would meet with the standards that the city would expect. The second thing you need to know is what C3 is and what it allows. C3 is essentially a retail commercial district. So while self-storage kind of crosses the line between commercial and industrial, it does not really behave like a C3 district. If you think about C3, you think grocery store, you think drive-in restaurant, you can think of lots of other things that may not be that desirable. But one thing that C3 does, almost in every case, is it generates a lot of traffic. And that is why we think that this parcel has just sat fallow for over 30 years. It was owned in the early 90s, and it's just sat. And we think it's because the access is not great if you're going to do heavy traffic. You're not going to get a cut on Pendleton Pike. You're going to have to come in through Bearsdale, which presents issues for our neighbors, and which is one thing we're very proud of. We've engaged with the neighbors behind us to come up with a plan that we think matches their desire to have a low-intensity next-door neighbor. You could see the subject property in tab 1, kind of outlined. Post office to the northeast and the KinderCare to the southwest, and of course some residential behind us and then across the street. This site, as mentioned, has been zoned C3 for over 30 years. You can see the zoning in tab 2. The darker shaded parcel is the subject property in question at C3, including the post office, CS, which is a commercial plan unit development, which houses the KinderCare. What we're proposing to do can be found in tab 3, that's the site plan. And if you're looking directionally speaking, you can kind of see the site plan in relation to the homes behind us or to the east. We've added some of the landscaping concepts that are referenced in our commitments, which would provide a buffer, both berming and landscaping along that east boundary. The 2 climate-controlled buildings are pulled up to the front along Pendleton Pike, and that's really going to be what you will see as a passerby, and we're very proud of the look. It will be consistent with other commercial type buildings along the way. We are featuring even the traditional self-storage facilities will have siding and windows, or faux windows, that will make it seem more like office type use than storage type use, and we've presented all of that to the neighbors. So you can kind of see the site plan arrangement, and we're tying ourselves to this site plan in our commitments, and that's tab 3. Tab 4 will give you a perspective view of the 2 climate-controlled buildings. You can see that they are 2-story buildings, which would be consistent with the max height in even under C3. You can see if you turn the page in tab 4, you can kind of see the rear-facing elevations. So you can see that we have taken some of the concept of providing some masonry finish and other treatments such that our neighbors looking back to the west will see something that's desirable, and it will also be buffered by landscaping. So those are the things that we ultimately presented to the neighbors. We met with them in April, and then again last night. I had another plan commission meeting, but my clients and representatives met with the neighbors last night, and we talked starting last month about how we might make sure that what we say we're going to do, that we're actually going to do it, and that we're actually going to provide some protections for our neighbors. So we've negotiated 11 commitments that are, again, in the loose tab, that tie us to the site plan, tie us to the elevations and quality materials that you see in your exhibit book. There are also exhibits to the commitments. We've got access limitations. All of this is going to be secured via fencing and electronic control, so you can't access it 24/7. You can see the hours are going to be much friendlier, frankly, than a lot of C3 uses that can be permitted. Ironically, my mom lives in a condo, and there's a Taco Bell that's about 500 feet away, which is fine actually during the day, but what happens late at night? And that's the kind of use that could go in, and it's not exactly neighbor friendly, but it is permitted. We've put in a commitment regarding our minimum berming, our fencing style, which would be kind of the wrought iron aluminum style fencing. We had vigorous discussions regarding retention ponds. These are going to be dry. They'll get wet at times of heavy rains, but they will not be permanently wet. Ms. Hughes was very passionate about wanting to make sure, A, we fenced around our pond areas, and B, that we maintain them. They don't want to have any issues as a result of drainage. Full cutoff shields on our exterior lighting, limitation to 2 monument-style signs, the signs that are about this tall and sit on the ground, no pole signs are permitted. We can only turn right onto Bearsdale when exiting, so we're not going to be going through the neighborhood. And then we have everything that is going to be stored on site will be inside the units. Big buildings are climate controlled. Those are excellent choices for long-term type of storage. There's no need to store anything outside of those. Sometimes you see self-storage facilities where you can have RVs and boats and things like that. We've got a specific commitment that says none of that, nothing outside. And then one of the things that was discussed last night was how do we make best use of some of the green area that we are going to have. And there was a suggestion, and I know that the city of Lawrence and the council is encouraging creative use of green space. So we're going to do some plantings in and around our detention areas that can either facilitate a butterfly habitat or other pollinator habitat. So we've added that as a commitment from last night. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. Waleed, did you want to say anything, or are you good? We've got our whole team. We've got our contractor, Waleed, who's the principal, Gene Higgins, who's the manager, and Chuck Cotterman, who's the architect. So we've got you covered if you have any questions. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you find that we have presented a viable option for this property. We encourage you to adopt our findings of fact that we filed as well. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions at this time?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Calderon, nice job meeting with the neighbors. I know there was a lot of time and effort that went into that, so good for you, good for your clients. That's commendable.
Thank you.
The drainage issue, is it 4 acres that you're looking at here? And
What's the net? There was some right-of-way given, so it was 4.2 gross. Do you know how much we're actually draining?
I do not. I'm not sure. It's all
yeah.
So engineers starting her work. The actual drainage plan. Conceptually, this is our plan. Right. So we're going to be going out. Obviously, the area between the buildings is all.
If you want to come up here, Chuck, and just kind of explain that generally the scheme that kind of wraps from the east side around back to the west. You can kind of see it if you'll turn to tab.
Yeah, I've got a little larger plan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we can't
Tab 3.
put it up on the screen, but the buildings on the east side have been, we've got a 50-foot transition yard, and then we've given an additional 25 to 30 feet of separation to the property line. So this is going to yield enough room, we believe, to create the dry detention area. And as you know, right now the outflow from the neighborhood cuts diagonally across the property, which is sort of an unusual situation. It's been like that for a long time.
There are lots of unusual drainage patterns in Lawrence.
Yes, indeed.
We'll accommodate everything that's coming on to our site from the neighborhood. and
Exactly.
incorporate that into our plans so that when we kind of route it through and ultimately outlet it, that it'll be taken care of. It won't have any backups back to the east.
And JD, just so you
Hey,
know.
hey, this is Sri. Can I interject for a minute?
Yes.
So, just for the board to know how the process works, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
This is, keep in mind, this is just a zoning petition. This is not a development permit. So when they come to us for a development site plan approval, we will review the drainage pattern to make sure there is no additional, no new flooding. The drainage patterns are met, and everything is designed per our stormwater design and within our detention standards. So we will not issue a permit until we make sure that all the drainage standards and the specifications are met. So that will happen down the line when they actually submit the plans to us for permit review.
Thank you.
Did you have an additional question beyond that, or were you kind of getting to it?
Just with the plantings, you know, that, I know Renee has told me that Marion County has certain restrictions on what can be planted, but birds don't follow those patterns. So if something starts growing that's not desirable, the thing that comes to mind is honeysuckle, because
Right.
it's all over Lawrence, and we're trying to keep that park as a, you know, butterfly preserve or
Right.
pollinator preserve. So what happens then? I know there's really not much in our ordinance about that.
Well, go ahead, Sri.
So I can touch base on that. So basically, because we still follow the Marion County zoning ordinance per the state law, anything that they are approved, we are bound to follow that. Until we pull out of the Marion County zoning, we cannot come up with our own zoning ordinance to change that. So, but usually when we approve commitments, city's inspector and city itself, DPW through DPW, will make sure that the commitments are met. If the planting is for native plants, we will make sure that that is being taken care of down the line, because that's part of the inspection that city does as part of this variances, is we make sure the commitments are met and enforced. So, but at this time, just because we are part of the Marion County, and still part of the Marion County, and then until we get out, there is not a separate zoning ordinance or enforcement we can do other than making sure that the commitments are met.
So to answer your question, Mr. Mazur, our commitment number 11 does say that we will plant accordingly for a butterfly or other pollinator type garden. So that would, of course, include the native species and shrubs and trees and flowers that would encourage that. And if there's, I suppose if there's something that gets not planted originally but starts coming up out of the ground that's invasive, we'll remove that.
And we typically work with the developers and who have given us commitments to make sure that the commitments are met. So that's an ongoing thing that we do. And then mutually they are all more than willing to accommodate our requests and commitments. So we have not had a problem to date on anybody not meeting the commitments.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Will we hear from the HOA?
Well, yeah, in a minute, if they want to speak.
Very good.
Okay.
So I'm trying to reconcile. So I think at the beginning of your argument, you had mentioned that this will hopefully draw in new traffic. Is that?
What we're saying is that the existing zoning, being C3, is a retail category that the permitted use list, amongst other things, are traffic generators. The traffic that this will generate is 3 or 4 visitors a day. At first, there'll be a few more during lease-up, but this is very, very low traffic. and the hours are restricted. So it will not be nighttime drive-through service type traffic.
How many, so I'm looking at your site plan.
Yep.
Two-story buildings, 30,000 square feet each. How many self-storage units?
There's a lot of units. Gene, why don't you come up, you'll have to do your name and address and speak to the record.
My name's Gene Higgins. I live in, do you need my address? 7223 Walnut Creek Drive, Westchester, Ohio. Question is how many units? It's approximately 500. We haven't narrowed down the exact amount. It's going to be based on the study that we have, but it'll be within 500, probably 495, 505, somewhere in that range.
Can you just talk about
Is that the cumulative,
traffic that generates?
is that the cumulative total between all the buildings, or is that?
All the buildings.
That's all the buildings.
Yeah.
That's everything. They're different sizes. There's smaller sizes, there's larger sizes, and
Sure.
that's all part of the unit mix. And we work with the architect to determine what the size will be, work with the architect to match that determination into the drawings itself.
Just for estimation purposes, so let's just round up and say there's 500 units. So do you anticipate renting that to 500 different customers?
Yes. Now, some will have more than one unit.
Sure.
Not everyone. Not everyone. So the way storage works, it's interesting in that people who are in the process of moving to a larger size, moving to a smaller size, or whatever their reasons, maybe they had a relative who passed and they're going to put all their stuff in a storage to determine what they're going to do with it. They come into the property, they visit the manager, they determine what their needs are, they sign the contract. That would be one visit. The second visit, they bring their goods in, offload it from the truck or their pickup truck or their van or whatever it may be, and put it into the storage. Then they might not see it again for 7-8 months because they have no need to. And in 7-8 months, they determine what they're going to use it for. Maybe they're going to sell the unit. Maybe they're going to sell the goods, at a garage sale at their house, or their new house is completed and they're going to move from their old house to their new house. Then they'll take the stuff out of storage and back in. So it's talking about 3 or 4 visits per customer over a 6, 7, 8, 9-month period of time.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I've rented several units in my
Then you know.
various purposes. Have you ever run into people trying to live in their storage units?
It's interesting, we were talking about this just last night. I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I've worked in many, many different locations. Very, very rarely and exclusively in urban settings will that happen. And we've learned how to control that, and we control that by motion detectors. So it virtually never happens in the suburban locations, but in some urban locations, you'll have a situation like that. The suburban locations, they close down their operation when they close the office, so everything's closed at 6 o'clock. So when somebody moves around to try to, it's detected by the motion detectors, the alarm goes off, the manager's notified, and the manager goes up and escorts the individual off. So nobody can successfully sleep at a storage facility.
And these hours that are part of the plan, I think those are subject to change, aren't they?
The office hours don't change and the visitation hours don't change. So from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, the person has the opportunity to go to visit their unit, to open it up and do whatever they need to do, get something out, put something in. The office hours are locked in from, from 9 to 5 o'clock, 9 to 6 o'clock during the week, and a shorter group of hours on Saturday, and we're always closed on Sunday. To answer your question, we don't change.
Those are commitments, so if there was a desired change, we would have to come back to this board and say, hey, we've got a lot more demand or this or that, and then we'd have to ask you as a board for permission. And then that's in your discretion whether to grant that or not. And if the HOA next door says, we don't think that's a good idea, you're not going to grant that. But that would be public proceeding for you that would have to be determined by you, whether to grant relief for not only that, but any of these commitments. That's why we're very careful when we talk and make promises, because we know that these, once signed, filed with the city, and then recorded, not only affect how this operator works, but also binds the property because it's recorded against the land. So there's no real out unless we come back to you as a board.
Let me take it one step further. We note in every lease that's signed by every customer what the hours of operation are, both for the storage side and both for the office side. We have no desire to change that.
But there's no restriction on how often they can visit, is that right?
Throughout the day, yeah, it's their unit. They can come visit it.
Okay, so even though we anticipate them only coming for 3 times in 6 months, they could actually come every day if they wanted.
They could come every hour if they chose to. You're exactly correct on that. I mean, I don't know why, but
I don't either,
yeah, they could. Yes.
but just for argument's
Yes,
sake.
sir.
Why? I saw something on the internet, why somebody might want to do that. Somebody was selling golf clubs out of a storage unit in Florida. And that's, I guess, along the same lines, you don't want to have a,
It's an excellent point. And may I address that point?
yeah, sure, yeah,
So
that's,
part of our lease also notes that this is for storage of physical goods exclusively. If by chance we find somebody selling golf balls out of the unit, they would be evicted immediately because it's in violation of their lease with us. So we do not want businesses operating out of it.
right.
That's not what we're doing. And if by chance somebody tried to be a little tricky with us, we would discover it immediately. We've got cameras, we've got manager on site, we would discover it immediately and we'd take corrective action immediately.
So the variance, as Mr. Calderon's asking for, is for storage, not for storage and sale,
We can add that.
you can sales.
If the board so desires, we can so state that in the commitments.
I think that's,
Not a problem.
yeah, great.
Because we do that anyway.
It's part of our lease and it's part of what we're committed to as a business operator.
And it's,
You're kind of interested in.
So you'd like a number 12 then? You'd like a number 12 that there'll be no business operation out of the storage units, is that?
that'd be great.
That's an easy one.
Now, my understanding is that the owner has another facility up off 146th Street and Promise Road, somewhere in there?
It is east of Promise Road.
How long has,
Closer to Maryland Road.
Okay.
Which is between Promise and the Hamilton Town Center.
Right.
On the south side of the street.
now, how long has that facility been up?
We're in our third year of operation.
Okay, I drive by it every week, so.
Oh, you're familiar with it?
Very familiar, so that's why I'm asking, and it's very well maintained. And I go every week at the same time, so it's very well maintained, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
That has a different architectural style, but the same type of quality, just with more of the Lawrence theme that the architect and owner worked on with the administration. That's more appropriate for this location, but the same type of quality materials, quality landscaping.
You couldn't tell it was a storage unit driving by.
I have a couple of questions, Madam Chair. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you? So just a couple of questions. Will management be on site?
I was going to ask that.
There's no live-on manager, if that's what you're asking. No, they have their own house and they just come, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6.
Okay.
And then Saturday from 10 to 4
Just report to work, right?
to report, exactly like the rest of us humans.
Well, right. What are the lease terms and what sort of occupancy rates do you anticipate?
When you say occupancy rates, are you talking about what we're going to charge or how full the property?
How full?
Okay.
Yep.
So obviously, we're going to start out at 0 occupancy. Our goal is to get up to 90% occupancy. It takes anywhere from 3 to 4 years to reach that goal. It could sometimes spill longer. It could sometimes go slower. We reach a break even about 36 months, at which time every incremental, rental just helps the business move along. What was your first question about?
The lease terms, or is it 1 year?
Lease terms are month-to-month lease with notice given on both ends. So if you come in, you sign the lease, you're good for the next 30 days. If you want to leave at that point, all we ask is for 2 days' notice, that we know you're moving out on Thursday, and we'll be ready for you to move out. So as long as you're paid up in full, month-to-month lease.
Yep. And are there any exhibits that would indicate or show what the monument signs will look like? I know the 6 foot is the maximum, but
I took a picture of.
Yeah, I don't know. I kept looking for one. Do you have something, Debbie?
or there'll be masonry to sort of match the architecture of the building, or what does that look like?
So there's a picture of the monument sign that we gave for the neighborhood.
We'll also look at the signs to make sure that they meet zoning code, placement and stuff.
This is, and this, and the board can look at this. Something like that. Yeah, exactly. That was a discussion we had with the neighbors because obviously the front's on Bearsdale.
Yeah, one of the signs is actually going to be for the neighborhood. So they'll have one sign for their business, monument sign, and the other monument sign's going to be for the neighborhood, for their entrance.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now? Thank you.
Thank you.
I also, too, want to commend you on working with the homeowners and everything. We haven't seen that in a long time, and so I'm very grateful that you took the time and did that, so.
Very welcome.
Now we'll hear from remonstrators, those that are for or against the petition.
Hi, I'm Debbie Hughes. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association out in the area where this facility wants to be put. We are actually for it. I have been throughout our community talking to all of our homeowners in the community. I've spoke with them in regards to what can go out there in the facility and what this gentleman is wanting to propose. Most of my homeowners in the community would rather see the storage facility go in place of the other businesses that will draw traffic into our community every day. I have been in our community 25 years, been on my board 19 of the 25 years, very involved. I took the time to go speak with my homeowners and ask them about this. Several concerns were brought up, traffic, crime, different things like that. It was addressed to the owner of the property and his group. All my questions was answered. I got a lot of feedback that was all positive. I personally would rather see the storage facility go in place of any of the other businesses because you're coming into a residential area off of Bearsdale. I was part of the design on the daycare center of how you come in to their property as well as this property here. I think it's going to cut down on traffic coming back into our community. Less traffic is the best for us. We have Oakland and Meadows, Rose Haven, and Carroll Crossing. and we have a straight shot through Pendleton Pike all the way to Carroll Road. We have over 1,000 vehicles come into our community on a daily basis. So we would rather see something like this come in place of what this is actually zoned for. Any questions?
Any questions for the board? The board?
Thank you.
She has a petition with a bunch of signatures,
I
too.
do have petitions for, from the community on this that I would like to turn over to the city.
Now, how many signatures do you have on there? Oh, that's okay.
I didn't count.
That's
it,
okay.
but-
That's
but
okay.
At least 50.
Okay.
And I didn't know if there was anybody else here in the community that wanted to speak.
How many hours did you spend on this?
How many hours did I spend on it? Well, let's say I've been the last 3 weeks. I would go out in the evening time and spend about 3 hours each night. Not every single day, but I spent quite a bit of time and spoke with my neighbors. A lot of them know me. Some of them are longtime residents, and some I spent an hour at their house, some I spent 10 minutes. I just basically told them what was going on, spoke with them in regards to what was taking place. And they appreciated me coming around because they were a little confused on the paperwork as well, wanting for sure what all was going on. But once I explained to them, what was going on and everything, they were for it. Yeah. They'd rather see the storage facility go in instead of like a fast food or something that's going to draw traffic every single day and could be into the late hours.
Yeah, I think you guys need to give her a unit.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. You did a lot of really important work that it's helpful to know what the people that live there.
Pardon?
It's helpful to know, helpful for us to know what everyone who lives in that area wants to know.
Yeah, I've been very involved with my community. Like I said, I've been out there 25 years and been on the board 19 of those 25 years. I've always said even if I wasn't on the board, I would still be involved. It's part of my community, so I'm dedicated.
I think that's some of the best evidence, honestly. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks for your community service.
Thank you.
I didn't recognize you out there. What, Counselor Maria?
Samaroff. Good evening, Lawrence BZA. Maria Samaroff, 11754 Sinclair Avenue, Lawrence, Counselor, District 4. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words regarding petition 22 LUV-06. Initially, when this project was proposed to me, I pulled several groups and constituents and Lawrence residents, and there were many concerns about this request. However, following several meetings with city staff, the owner, his associates, the neighborhood residents, the HOA president, Ms. Hughes, several amendments to this initial request were agreed to. I have to thank the city staff, the owner and his representatives for all the cooperation and assistance that were accomplished to come to a meeting of the minds in this negotiation. These negotiations have resulted in a superior and environmentally sensitive site plan, superior elevation plan, sign agreements, and commitments. And additionally, in consideration in the operations and appearance of the owners of the 146th Street existing project that the owner now has under his ownership. So lastly, I think this site will essentially function as a C1 office use in both appearance and operations, whereas any permitted uses would have been much more intensive to the site and the adjacent neighborhood. Therefore, given these factors and the process conducted, I can see no reason this variance should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for either right now? Okay, we'll hear from the City of Lawrence. Dan?
I believe all the commissioners, good evening, by the way. I believe all the commissioners received a letter from me explaining my perception and how over the past 3 or 4 years, Sri and I have turned down literally dozens of applicants for this particular site, believing that they were intrusive, that there were issues relative to drainage and traffic and noise and other appearances that would be not desirable for the neighborhood or to the city. I have vetted this project with Sri side by side for now probably 6 months. We believe this is the right thing for the city of Lawrence. And given that I've already expressed this pretty specifically in my letter, I'll quit with that unless anybody has any further questions.
Does the board have any questions for Dan? Thank you very much, Dan. We'll hear from the petitioner. Do you have?
Just a moment. I just wanted to thank my client, my owner, first of all, for being so willing to do the extra work that it took to bring this to you tonight. When he presented this to me months and months and months ago, I said, here's the way you have to do it. You have to sit down, you have to coordinate and collaborate with the city first to make sure that they fully understand what you're doing. I was already a believer because I knew about the 146th Street site and knew that he had gone through the same type of painstaking process that adds a little time to the approval timeline, but it's worth it in the end. So we did that. That was well before we filed. A lot of clients say, we got to file, and then you're chasing your tail trying to fix things that are difficult to fix, especially in a variance situation. So I want to express my gratitude to Waleed for being so collaborative. I want to express my gratitude towards Ms. Hughes and her group. We came in on April 4th or 5th, and she said, I'm not for this. And we worked with them, and it was pretty intimate setting right here where we talked through issues and said, well, we can do this and we can do that. We can change this. We can add that. We can make promises that are written and enforceable. And that started to turn the tide, and we continued to work with her over the course. She visited the 146th Street facility with Waleed. I'm grateful to Councilor Rusamarov, who I've known for a long time, and she has a planning background, and she was kind of the same way. We met, and she said, I've heard from some of my constituents that they don't want this, and we did the same thing. We took the time, we explained what we were doing, we made promises, and I'm just grateful that it all worked out. So thank you, and hopefully that is enough to earn your affirmative vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from anybody else, the demonstrators. Okay, the board is ready to vote on 22 LUV06 12147 East 65th Street. Variance of use of 743-2, Table 743-1 of the City of Indianapolis Consolidated Zoning Subdivision Ordinance to provide for a self-storage facility, including both indoor climate control units as well as traditional outside accessed units on a partial zone C3.
With the commitments as presented tonight at the meeting, number 1 through 11, with the addition of a number 12, there will be no business operations from the individual units allowed.
The board has unanimously granted the petition.
Welcome to Lawrence.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, Renee, is there a meeting next month?
Yes, we do have a meeting next month. The towing petition will be on there, and then I'm supposed to be getting another one in the morning.
Okay.
So,
Now the Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned.
yes.